Okay, so for the blocking out process, part 2, we're going to block out the patio, and you will have figured out your space plan down here for that area. But you're going to be using whatever design you have for the entrance point to the patio as your back wall of your grid. So in this case, we had a 6-foot window, a pair of 3/0 French doors for a 6-foot opening, and then another 6-foot window. So I'm going to change that into 3 French doors. So again, this is going to be the wall of the house leading out to the patio. Excuse me, and you're going to be looking, you're standing on the patio looking back toward the house. Okay, so I'm going to count out a foot over and then a 6-foot wide opening for a pair of doors. And then another, count out 3 more, another 6-foot wide opening. So again, each of these grid squares represents a foot. Now I want to remember where my point is. I'm going to push the depth of that back, just like a window. So I'm connecting the corners with my vanishing point to create the recess of the wall to where the door is going to set in. Again, so on this one, because my eye's right in the middle of this opening, I'm going to see all the sides with depth. And then on this one, I'll see the right side that has depth. Again, I'm connecting to the point here. Okay, so can you see those 3 openings? Now this is where you might want to use another color to show the color of the door set into that opening. So let's say I'm going to have a big pane of glass, just kind of a clean type of a French door with one big glass inset like that. Okay, so I'm going to, again, I'm setting those into that opening, adding in the glass. So notice again, I'm not drafting, I'm just sketching on the grid, which will make this whole process go much faster than if you're trying too hard to draft it perfectly. There's no need for that. It's still going to be a conceptual sketch here in the beginning. We'll refine it through the layers, but this first layer can be kind of loose as you're figuring out what you want to do here. So remember, I haven't taped this paper to the grid either, so that I can lift it up and take a look at what I'm doing and put it back down. Okay, so I'm starting to see the French doors, but now I need to define more of the house. So on this one, I'm going to, here's the corner of the house. Okay, and on this bottom part, I could have 2 choices. I could either create a return wall here, or I could extend the wall going this way to be the line for where the dining room is. So in other words, I could put another French door here, and the facade could stretch off this direction. Okay, I'm also going to note that it's a 2-story house, so this line could extend up. However, I'm going to put a balcony on mine off the 2nd floor. So I'm going to go ahead and add a line here and then count 8 squares out, 2, 4, 6, 8, to kind of relate to the proportions of the Venetian side. Bring that across. And that's going to be the thickness of the concrete. So it's like a cantilevered deck coming out from the 2nd floor. So I'm going to go ahead and add a line here for either railing or glass, a partition of some sort. That's going to be part of that balcony. And then the bedroom itself, or like that 2nd floor, I'm going to offset. So like the balcony then wraps around 2 sides here. Okay, so I might just imply another French door up here. Note that it would be coming down lower. So I'm just going to see kind of the top half of it. The rest of it's cut off by the balcony. So I'm just going to imply again, another door up here, loosely, coming out from bedroom perhaps. Okay, so you're starting to see that. Now, the other thing to note is I have to decide what I want to put over in this area, but I'm just going to hold off on that right now. The other thing to note is, remember, the ocean view is off to the side. So I'm going to bring that horizon line to the ocean up to my eye level. So that's going to be your ocean over here. You might put a cliff in or something, because remember, they're in La Jolla, so maybe this is the cliff looking out towards Del Mar. And then this would be the plants and so forth in the foreground. And maybe the ocean's back here in the background. All right? Now, the other thing is you don't want the ocean to feel like it's coming right into the deck. So you're going to make it feel like it's further in the distance. And then again, maybe put something in the foreground to help that illusion. And make sure that the ocean stays horizontal. Okay, so as you render it, the lines are going to stay more horizontal. Okay, now looking back here to start to block out what's on the deck, I'm going to put a fireplace over in this area. So I decided I am going to go ahead and do a return here. And this will be where a door comes out from the dining room into this area. But on here I'm going to use the floor grid to block out the fireplace. So let's say the fireplace is 2 feet deep for the hearth, and I'm going to connect from the point again to start to bring that up. And then I'm going to just show the shape of the fireplace coming up. So maybe there's a chimney here. Notice again on the depth of the fireplace, that'll be horizontal, where the fire sits back in this area. And this will be a raised hearth that's going to be in front of the fireplace. So you see I'm just implying kind of the beginning of that. Maybe there'll be some tile around the opening or something. Okay, and then now I want to think about the, so I'm showing the depth of the wall here to where the French door is going to sit in. Okay, now I'm going to start to think of the furniture out here on the deck. Okay, so, or the patio. So I'm going to use my sidewall grids to help me place that, and I'll do it in another color. So let's say to have a water feature, I'm going to go ahead and draw in the edge of a pool here. And maybe there's like a cascade down or something to create a sound of water that they wanted. This could be a reflecting pool or a swimming pool, over in this area. So now I'm left with this area to block out some furniture for them to sit with the fireplace and the pool and the view of the ocean. How nice, right? Sounds like a perfect place to hang out at a time like this. Anyway, so now we're going to bring out the lines from the vanishing point and count out how big we want to have this seating area. So let's say I'm going to do 2 chaise lounges that are 3 feet wide. So I've got 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to have them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These kind of long shapes with a 2-foot gap in between to put a table or something. So I'm blocking out those on the floor grid. Excuse me. Okay, so here's my footprints for those lounges. And now I'm going to count over by going from my my grid line. I'm going to come over, count up 18 inches, and bring that back over to the footprint. So again, I'm following that horizontal grid line over to the sidewall. I pick up the height that I want, and I shift it over to the footprint. Once I've measured once, I've simply used the vanishing point to get the other verticals. So I'm going to connect from the point through that top of that vertical across this footprint will give me my next vertical. Okay? If this line's horizontal, the line above it's horizontal. And that'll give me the next vertical. And then I go back toward my point, which will give me my next vertical. And again, this line's horizontal, so the line above it's going to be horizontal. Okay, so here's the box for the first chaise lounge. And then now I have the second one, so I can just use that same height by coming from my vanishing point across those verticals and then come up from the footprint to connect to that line. And see how the chaise is going to look tall right here in the foreground. And that's right. Don't second guess that. A lot of times people will go, that doesn't seem right because it's too big. But no, things are going to look bigger as they get closer to you in your visual field. Okay, so now I have these 2 lounge areas, and maybe they'll put a table in between or something to rest a beverage on, or maybe something out here. But what I'm noticing from this view is I'm not adding in a lot of plants so far, and they are gardeners, so I need to think about that. So maybe do I want to put some pots here? We have the vine coming up. Okay, gotta start it one more time, honey. Can you start it for me one more time? Okay, so like I was saying, this blocking out process is a perfect time to look at your concept and see what's missing. So for example, I realize I need to put more plants, so I've added some potted plants in the area on the drawing so that I can enliven that and make it feel like your garden. Or you could actually add in some built-in planter area here in the front. Okay, so once you've got this first layer figured out, now it's time to evolve it and refine it. So I'm going to go ahead and overlay this and start to work out my design with a little more detail. So notice how I've decided to make an interesting piece of furniture here. That's one huge chaise that has a back where they could sit to face the fire, or they could shift and sit over here to face the ocean and the pool. Okay, so again, the blocking out process should be enabling you to think of your design a little bit deeper and areas that might need to shift or change. Okay, so on your next layer, you're going to start to add in the feeling of the furniture, maybe some of the accessory items. So I'm going to have like an iron sculptural piece here that the artist did above the fireplace, some Moroccan style lamps, these potted areas or potted plants with some planter areas. And then in subsequent layers, then you'll keep refining that vision further. And it's always helpful to take the one out from underneath so you don't have too many lines there. At this point, you don't even have to have your grid underneath. You can just refine your view right on top of your evolved layers. And then finally, you're going to evolve it further. And then I'll show you in some future videos on how we're going to render it. But notice how I started to refine it with line weights. So the lighter line weights for the top soft edges or the top of the pillows, the glass on the Moroccan lamps, or the glass on the pitcher and the glasses here, or the bowl, the fruit, all of that with a lighter, softer touch on the line weight. And then adding in some thicker, heavier line weight where you want it to look like the glass is set back in to the door. So you've got some depth there on the wood. Or some heavier line weight on the edges of the tile or the grout lines. So again, this is your next step is to evolve it to its finished state, ready to render. Notice how I've broken up the line weight up here on the top, so it implies the second floor without a lot of detail, and because we want this to be the focal point. So again, on future demos, I'll show you how to render this. But another important point though is with the plants. Think about if you have a background plant, remember you're going to reduce the texture, and you don't want the plant to come out here across the facade of the building. Otherwise it's going to feel like, see how the stem is, or the trunk is set back? So that means the leaves have to set back behind this line of the building. Okay? Another thing is, as you work in the plants, remember you want to put those in first before you put the architecture in, so that they don't look transparent. So you'll work foreground and work back as you start to evolve it. Also think about some special effects like reflection. See how I can see kind of the feeling of the door and the white of the building reflected into the pool here. And we'll work on, again, the rendering of all that in a future demo. All right, so another ideas for the patio would be, again, starting from that grid. Here's another one. Notice how you don't necessarily have to do something as elaborate as what I just did. You could add in, and here's the original background grid, okay? On this one I put 2 French doors, and I took the original door and made it into this niche, which is kind of a bubbling urn fountain with planter around it. And this was in evolved layers, so that's why I have the X's to help me figure out the arches. So here's a little bump out that shows a dining area. On this one, notice how the facade of the house continues horizontally. So you can see how this line just continues horizontally to show these French doors leading out from the dining area in that adjacent room. And then I went ahead and bumped the deck out to encompass that area as a viewing platform for the ocean. Okay, so this one, the furniture is a little simpler. I just have the 2 chaise lounges, and then I'm going to have some featured garden plants here in the foreground and a built-in planter box. Also think about accessory items like light fixtures, sconces, Again, you know, if is it going to have some decorative tile or accents, what would the pots look like to help create the ambiance for the setting. So again, when you're trying to create an outdoor area, you want to have a nice mix of textures and color so it feels lively. You don't want it to just feel like kind of a bleak concrete slab, you know, with a deck chair and a potted geranium. You know, we're trying to create a whole atmosphere of something that that fantasy that you're trying to sell to your client, so that they really appreciate their new design. Okay, thank you.